8. Today's been an exciting day for you. This morning, you discovered that at the base of the hill where your tower stood, there was a little village called Caravana. Strange enough that the village could exist without your knowledge, you also learned that some of the villagers knew you and your mother and have been wondering where you've been for the last few years. Thankfully, they didn't question your absence too much, considering they knew how much your mother enjoyed her privacy, and were very helpful when you told them that you'd actually like to leave the area and go exploring in the wide world. Jacob, the mayor's son, pointed you along the best route to take to get to the airport at the Giant's Fist. His sister Mary was happy to accept your request to maintain the tower and gardens while you're on your adventure. Naomi, the baker, and her husband Jeb made sure you had enough food to last during the 2-day journey. They packed you off with one of her famous gooseberry pies, a loaf of crusty bread, a wedge of hard white cheese, and a bit of jerky. After gathering a few belongings and saying goodbye to the only home you've ever known, you set off down the road that led you into the forest near the village. Most of today has been spent listening to the sound of birds in the trees and small animals scurrying in the underbrush as you walked down that road. Now, as you approach the edge of Lake Kari, dusk is drawing near. You can hear the sound of the water lapping lazily against the shore, the cheerful sound of peepers in the distance. Do you wish to carry on, or do you wish to stop for the evening?
How late is it?
Dusk is settling in. It's about late spring, mid to late spring. So, I mean, it's going to be dark very soon, and whether or not you're going to want to walk in the dark in an unfamiliar area is really up to you.
Well, I certainly wouldn't like to be caught traveling when the sun disappears, so I think that I will search for a suitable place to sit and wait until the light returns in the morning. And if the area around the lake is as peaceful as it seems it might be, this might be a good place for me to stop. In fact, I can't remember the last time I've ever seen a lake, or a lake for that matter. I think I would like to sit by the lake's edge and spend the evening.
Fair enough. Just off the road, actually right between the road and the lake shore, you do see a nice patch of grass where there's, a couple rocks, a fallen stump of a tree. So it's a nice little spot for someone who really doesn't need a whole lot of space or a whole lot of to do in order to make camp. The ground is not too moist. It's soft, so it gives a little bit under your feet. But thankfully, it's far enough away from the shore that it's not muddy or uncomfortable. Is there anything in particular you'd like to do in order to spend your time this evening?
First thing I would do is I will pull out the winter blanket I have and lay it down on the grass. It's a little damp, so I'd prefer not to get my traveling clothes too dirty at this point. So I'll sit down on the blanket. I just kind of fold it out, spread it out on the ground, and just plop down, sit cross-legged, and just put my hands on my knees, sit and listen, see what new sounds I can hear.
It takes a little while for some more of the sounds of nature to come back. As you had approached the lake, you would hear peepers and you could hear the water, but you really didn't hear too much wildlife. The road during the day had been well enough traveled that you could probably infer that creatures that normally reside in the area will keep their distance from the road. So as you sit there, it takes a little while, and slowly you start to hear crickets, and you start to hear bullfrogs and other night sounds. You hear the sound of some larger creature in the distance walking through the underbrush. You can hear the snap and the crackle of leaves and twigs, and every once in a while you see the flash of eyes in the distance, but nothing comes close. Everything seems to want to keep their distance from you. And actually, we should probably take a second and tell the audience, if they're picturing this scene in their head, who they actually see sitting on this blanket. I know you said you're wearing traveling clothes, but why don't you give us a little bit more of a description as to what 8 looks like?
Oh, goodness. So, 8, as was mentioned earlier, is a Warforged. They are designed in a way to look humanoid. A lot of your typical Warforged might be big and bulky, but 8's make is that of a caretaker. So they have a friendly looking face with bright eyes, and the plating on their face comes together and makes almost a sort of smile that is etched across the pieces. They have uh, not really flaps, but pieces that would be slightly reminiscent of ears on the side of their head, but they don't necessarily function as ears. They just are there for some familiarity to those who might look on at 8. They are roughly 6 feet tall. Yeah, 5 feet 9 inches. So they're 5 feet 9 inches. They're high. They're tall enough to stand toe to toe with most people. And 8's body is fairly androgynous in make. A lot of the plates have white polished finish to them, with some bronze or gunmetal colored trim to them, and some etchings and symbols that have been carved into some of those plates, which 8 doesn't quite know what they are for or what they actually mean or represent, but whoever created them must have had a reason for putting those symbols on their body. As far as 8's clothing, they tend to wear a light blue robe with a long draping wrap that kind of makes a shawl or a scarf that falls down over their shoulders past their waist. And 8 travels fairly light, carries a small backpack with some herbalism equipment, some cooking utensils, and other uh, other items that they can use for documenting and cataloging things that they see and experience on their adventure. And actually, I'm pretty sure 8 has a couple blankets along with them. So, if at the very least, 8 can offer a blanket to a fellow traveler or to someone who sits with them or joins them along their trip, the one thing that 8 loves to do is entertain others and learn more about them and try and make friends with folk as best they can. Um, I suppose that's probably a bit more than people care to hear, but 8's a big old friendly robot with stompy feet, but they're a good folk.
And anybody who has watched any of the Roads Uncharted so far will know that 8 is also like the biggest sweetheart. So All right. Well, that's actually really good because I think that's more than people got in a description in one of the main Roads Uncharted episodes. That's good. I like that. I like learning a little bit more about what makes eight tick in a way because that's actually one of the reasons why we're doing this episode. All right. So with that being said, you sit for a while and you listen to the sounds of nature. Do you light a fire at all as it starts to get really dark?
Well, the question at hand, I didn't really think to gather wood at this point. I'll just be
No, you
staying
didn't.
overnight, and it feels wasteful to burn something right along the water's edge here and maybe disturb the wildlife. So what I'm really going to do is I'll take my lantern that I have, my hooded lantern, and I'm going to set it up in front of me, and I'll just go ahead and hold on to it with one hand, and with my other, I will take my mask. That's right. 8 also travels with ceremonial vestments that they took from their tower. They belonged to their mother, or at least 8 thinks they belonged to their mother, their creator. And it's a face plate, a face mask with a stylized ibis beak. For ease of the listeners to imagine it, think of it like an old, creepy Italian doctore's mask, but it's more stylized like the Egyptian
God of
ibis.
Thoth. Or
Yeah,
God Thoth.
god
Not
Thoth.
God of Thoth.
God of knowledge, Thoth. So it's the long, slender, curved beak. So holding the mask over their face and channeling a little bit of latent divine energy, 8 will cast light and cause the lantern to shine brilliantly in the area around them without actually using any oil or having to light it.
How bright of a light are we talking? Or like just a little glow around 8 or like bright enough for it to look like daylight?
It burns as bright as a torch, so not terribly bright, but enough to at least keep a good aura around 8 and hopefully keep anything that's less friendly from feeling comfortable approaching him.
Okay, so kind of the idea of fire, but not really being fire
Yes.
to anything out in the wild. Okay. You light your lantern, and because it happens so suddenly when it's already very dark, um, some of the noises stop, and it takes a few minutes for the sounds to resume. And as you're sitting there, you start to hear something in the underbrush getting louder,
Mhm.
something moving closer.
Hmm.
Would you make a perception check for me or an investigation? I'll give it to you either one for this instance because you would have to scan the underbrush and darkness of an unknown area. So either one would, if you'd like.
I'll go with perception, since it would be how well I can notice a thing.
That's fair.
And I rolled a 14 for my perception as I peer into the brush from where I'm seated, kind of behind the lantern, just scanning and hoping to catch a glimpse of whatever is sneaking around.
Okay. You don't see anything at first. Um, but as you're scanning and you're looking out into the darkness and trying to hone in your sights on where you're hearing the noise, you see a little furry creature poking its head from out amongst the leaves.
Can I
And it,
identify what type of small creature this is?
if you would like to try, you may.
I would love to. I've read about so many different creatures in the library, but I've never come face to face with anything yet. So
Oh,
I rolled a 20. Not natural 20, but
right. Still. All right. Yes, you do recognize this creature. It's called a Veradim. And as it,
very dim.
Veradim, yes, as it meanders a little closer, it's keeping its eyes on you. And um, one second here. It's keeping its eyes on you and the lantern. It doesn't really know what you are, why you're here. So it does want to get to the lake. So it's walking out and starting to head towards the shoreline, but it keeps its eyes on you as it's walking. And as it emerges more fully from the underbrush, um, the best thing I can relate this to, both you as a player and to the audience, is picture a red panda, but instead of that bright red color, um, because as it gets closer, it does fall into the lantern light, so you are able to discern um, the color of the fur and everything. Instead of that bright red, it's actually a very dark green. And what you know about this particular creature is that it is nocturnal. It does like to forage for insects and fish, and so it's more of an omnivore because it also eats a lot of algae and things that grow on the lake bed and other plants. And that actually is why it kind of looks green, is because it yeah, a lot of that stuff when it goes fishing gets caught in its fur, and it kind of um, turns the fur that really weird green. So it's not naturally green, not not by birth anyway. um, they tend to be very curious, but very cautious as well. So um, it slowly makes its way to the lake, and when it realizes you're not going to move, it takes its eyes off of you and scurries a little faster to the lake shore. And you watch as it laps up some of the water, and then it pauses and looks at you again before sliding into the lake. And all you see is the head above the water line as it moves out towards the other side of the lake and away from your view.
Interesting. I would like to, while it's kind of passing by, I'd like to pull out my little notepad, my book, as it were, and my quill and some ink and try and do a quick sketch of it.
Alrighty.
And then after it's gone, try and finish it from memory, because why not?
Well, yeah, I mean, you've seen pictures of it, so it's not hard for you to take what you've seen in life and extend it to the book based on memory. So I will give you that.
After I'm done with that and satisfied, I'll put that down on the blanket, clean off the quill real quick, and stow it back in my pack. And I would like to walk to the water, bringing the lantern with me,
Okay.
and just
The
stand
water's
at the
edge
water.
is okay. The water's edge is only like 4 feet from where you've been sitting, so it's not too far of a walk. And as you get closer, the ground gets a little softer, and your feet don't exactly sink into the ground, but you can definitely feel the give now. And you said you want to walk into the water?
I'll wade out a little bit, just a touch, maybe just to get my feet wet.
So like ankle high?
Yeah,
Okay. And you're holding the lantern out in front of you or down
kind
to your
of
side?
off to the side.
Okay. You walk just past where the water meets the shore, and you start to feel the very cool water against you, and you can feel as the lake is just continues to lap lazily, so you feel the water reach a little higher every now and then ebb back and flow. And with the lantern, as you had stepped into the water, you saw what few little fish they went scurrying away, far away from your feet. And the water itself is pretty dark looking. I mean, it is nighttime, so even if it was clear, what's underneath is brown and gray, and you, as you're walking, you can feel rocks at the bottom of your feet. Not really sharp, but enough that if you're not careful, you could lose your footing.
Was there a lot of uh, were there a lot of trees that were around the lake shore, or is it just kind of sitting out in like a grassland, or what's the kind of vicinity of the lake?
So when you had approached Lake Curry earlier, you did notice that the lake was surrounded in its entirety by forest.
Okay, so I'm all right. So it's like a nice, isolated, shady, comfortable place to sit and rest.
Exactly.
I hold the lantern out and see how far across the lake I can see, and just see if I can spot the Veridim out in the water. And after a little bit of time, just kind of futzing around, I will turn back around, leave the water, and go back and sit, and maybe just meditate until the sun comes back.
Okay. The rest of the night passes without too much issue. No other creatures um, seem to want to get too close, even though you don't seem like you're doing anything harmful. It's their custom that they'll keep away with anything that's two-legged. They don't want anything to do with people or anything that would look like them. The morning comes, and as the sun starts to create a very rosy hue this morning, you see that much of the lake's edge has actually been filled in with tall grasses, almost like cattails. Things that you didn't notice when you arrived last night, as it was too dark to see too far out across the lake. Nothing, nothing else is notable this morning. The breeze rustling through the trees is cool. The grass is damp with the spring morning air, and the sky is pretty clear. A wispy cloud or two, but otherwise it looks like it's going to be a nice day.
Those those grasses and the sort of cattails. Do I know if those are um, natural? Are they supposed to be here?
You can go ahead and make a nature check if you'd like.
15.
Yes. Yeah, those belong here. They're very natural with the way that the area, how do I want to word this? From all the studies that you've done in the tower, all the books about plant life and flowers and ecosystems, you do know that there is nothing unnatural about these grasses. They aren't of any use medicinally or food wise, but they are natural within this particular ecosystem.
That was going to be my next question. Okay. Well, I will gather up my belongings and pack the the little book back up, make sure my ink and my quill have been stowed away properly, and I grab the edges of my blanket, stand up and flap it off, make sure I get any loose dirt or um, dust or grass blades or whatever that might have come up with it off of it, and then I just quick fold it up, roll it, and stow it back on top of my pack and get ready
Okay.
to head out.
All right. When you head out, you're able to follow the road, and it actually winds along the edge of the lake. So you are able to get a little bit more um, of a view of the lake as a whole instead of just that one spot. You actually go almost around it completely. And then eventually the road leads away from the lake and back into the forest, but only briefly. It's not long before you stand in a clearing filled with flowers of blue, pink, and yellow. And it expands for quite a bit of distance. I'd say probably 100 feet or more. You just see this wide clearing full of these flowers. And as you continue to walk the road, the flowers are following you. So you can just walk across this field of flowers, and soon you see into view crumbling ruins. And the road diverges a little bit towards those ruins, but as it diverges, it actually becomes less obvious that there is road. But if you continue to the right, you can keep following the road towards your destination.
Oh, there's so much useful things here. So much going on. First things first, I would like to stop and look at the flowers,
Not surprised.
and I would like to just compare them. Do they look like the same strain, just different colors, or
Yes.
they're not separately? They're not different or distinct types of
No, they are
flowers.
all the same, what appear to be the same type of flower, just different colors. All of them are on very tall stalks of light green foliage, and each of the flowers is almost conical in shape. So picture like a pine cone. It looks like that, but flower petals. And you can see all the little bees and butterflies and other insects floating in and amongst all the flowers as they try to get up that sweet nectar.
Oh my goodness! And there's bees and butterflies. Oh, geez. Uh, do I know what type of flowers these are?
You can go ahead and make another nature check if you'd like.
It's a 19.
Yes, you know what these are. These flowers are actually called, give me one second. I will type it out to you first and then I will say it. All right. They're called Fulara, and you know that these flowers can be ground into um, a powder that can be used when mixed into liquids to help cure symptoms of things like the flu and lower fever.
Okay. Ooh, such a useful field of all of these wonderful Fulara. I have a sack on hand, and I would like to gather up a couple handfuls of some of these plants. Not too much, because I don't want to ruin the landscape, but having them on hand in the future may be useful. So I might like to gather up just enough for maybe 4 or 5 treatments, as it were.
Okay, so that'll be 2 flowers apiece.
But,
Yes.
okay, so I just kind of go about and pick at the stalk, And now is it the flowers or is it the stalks?
Um, it is actually everything.
The whole thing. Okay.
Yeah.
So I will be pinching off at the stalks and trying to pull up with as much root as possible so that I can get good samples for use later. And I'll bind up the group that I collect and stick it in one of my sacks and stick that sack inside of my backpack.
Okay. All right. So you collect some of the Fulara, and all the bees and the butterflies and everything, and all decide that they're gonna avoid you while you're picking flowers. Anything that you would have reached for, they actually would back off and go find something else. I mean, there's plenty for them to have access to, so it's not like you're disturbing too much.
And after I'm done gathering the Fulara, I would like to try and lean in close and see as many butterflies as I can so that I might just admire them as they're going about their butterfly business.
Most of the butterflies that you see are very small. Plenty of them have their wings are outlined in black with splotches of color like bright reds and blues, a couple of greens. You have a few of the larger ones are yellow with the black lining. Those almost look uh, what we would know as a yellowtail butterfly, uh, with the little tails at the bottom of their wings. They're content to just float around and get what they can with the fruit juice, the flower juices, and just hang out on the petals themselves and sun
How
themselves as they
wonderful.
slowly move their wings.
Ooh, so carefree and whimsical. I'll
As
spend
you are,
a bunch of time just looking at butterflies right now.
no, that's fine. You don't have really anywhere to be. Um, as you are doing so, you do feel something smack into your head, like right between your eyes.
Uh, is it like a little bug or something? Is
You have a bumblebee that just smacked into your face.
it okay?
It's fine. It looks a little dazed, but it is circling around your head. It's trying to figure out if you are food because you are brightly colored.
Well, I
What with
mean,
your rose gold plating and all.
yeah, with my yellowy goldish trim. I suppose that makes
Yeah.
sense. I I pucker my lips and I blow out at it and just go away, go away, bug. Sorry, bee. I am not a flower. That I feel a little ashamed that I'm confusing the bee, so I carry on so that I'm not distracting them anymore.
Sorry,
Sorry. I'm sorry,
I'm
Bumblebee.
I just picture that stereotypical cartoon where like the bottom lip is like forced out and the air is going up towards the top of the head. All right. Sorry.
Really what I just did.
Yeah. Oh, good. All right. So you're gonna keep going. Now, are you gonna go towards the ruins, or you are? Okay.
Yes. That
So
there's so much important stuff for me to stop and
you need to
examine.
just check out everything,
I have
right?
to see everything in order.
Okay. So like I said, the road is going to diverge a little bit, and at first it leads towards the ruins, and then the road slowly disappears, and it becomes covered with grass and moss. And as you come closer to the ruins, the first thing you see is this large stone archway. Probably would have been the entryway to the wall that appears to have at once, one point or another, surrounded these ruins. Um, Much of the wall has now been torn down or lays in piles of rubble, but this archway still stands. And as you walk through that archway, you see the sorry for anyone listening, that's our cat. You actually see Walls that would have made up the interior of stop this Cinna, are you done? It's fine, that's why I'm trying to give it a little second. Alright. So, you walk through this archway, and as you walk through it, you notice that there are walls that look to be what used to be the interior of the structure, and there are some windows and further arched doorways. Most of the structure has actually deteriorated to the point where it no longer exists. You see the base of it near the ground, so you can kind of make out how big, okay, this room was pretty sizable, this room was small. This area over here looks like it might have at one point been a garden or a training area. You can see parts of the structure that are reaching up to the sky, and they're pretty tall and wide. So perhaps they were turrets, perhaps they had some other use. You're not really sure. But it's quiet and it's peaceful. There's moss growing over the stonework, and every once in a while you'll see a tree that either has been growing for quite some time or a sapling that's just getting tall enough and strong enough to survive the winters. You see birds' nests up where windows used to be, where parts of the stairway used to be. Nature's overtaking this building, that much is sure. Bless you. Um, I want you to make a perception check.
Oh no. Okay, just rolled a 20. I'm on fire today.
You are. As you're wandering through the ruins and you're checking things out, the first thing that you notice is that there are symbols carved into certain parts of what used to be wall. They're mostly towards the back of the structure, but as you wander through some of the rooms, you'll see a symbol here or there, and what this symbol looks like, um, it looks like the Fulara out in the fields, and that singular Fulara stalk with its petals is surrounded by a dual circle. It's quite faded, and the only reason you can really tell it's a Fulara is because certain rooms actually have them painted. So that paint is still there. It's chipped away and it's faded, but it's still there.
So the flower is flanked by circles? Two
Yes.
circles?
Mhm.
Hmm.
You also hear the sound of someone crying softly.
Well, that's awkward. Okay, how close is that?
I mean, close enough. It's probably not more than 30 feet away.
I will try and pinpoint the sound of the crying.
Okay. So you search around the ruins a little bit, and as you head towards the back of the structure and around what would have been the backyard or just an open area behind the building, you see that there's a little girl, and her leg is caught under some fallen rocks. She's very dirty, her face is tear stained, and her clothes are smudged and torn. When she sees you, she stops crying and her eyes go wide. And she tries to get away, but she can't. Please don't hurt me. Please.
You. Hello? I'm not here to hurt you. I just heard you crying and thought I would see if you needed help.
You. You're not gonna hurt me?
Of course not. I would never consider it. My name is 8. What is your name?
She looks at you up and down. She sees your mask and she points to it and says, "What's that?"
I turn and look at the mask on my hip and I unclasp it and hold it out and kind of kneel down a little bit to get closer to the same level. And I say, "This is my mask. I use this to perform small tricks."
What kind of tricks?
At that, I look for a small stone nearby and pick it up and put the mask on and cast light on it. And I just have a teeny little rock that's making light now.
When you do that, she and her eyes go wide and she's staring at this glowing rock. And can I touch it?
Of course. In fact, you may have it.
She holds out both her hands and she's cupping them, and she looks up at you, then she looks back at the rock and just sits there with her hands cupped forward.
Now, that won't stay lit forever, but it will last for a while. Now, might I ask what your name is?
She moves the rock a little bit in her hands, and a small smile crosses her face, and she looks up and she says, "My name is Layla. I was playing in the ruins with some friends, and the wall crumbled. When I got caught, my friends ran off. They told me they were going home, but they haven't come back yet."
I see. Can I help you? Please, allow me to help you. I'm sure your parents must be worried about you.
You can move the rock? I tried and it's heavy.
I certainly can. I certainly can. How big is the rock?
it's it's sizable. I mean, she's like, we're talking 6 years old, so it's not going to be need to be too big for her to not be able to lift it. I would say it's probably about foot across and half of a foot wide. So we're talking maybe 8 pounds.
Uh, oh, okay.
Yeah, I mean it's the fact that it's caught amongst other rocks, so her foot's kind of jammed underneath.
Yeah.
Yeah. And like I said, she's a young child, so it's not going to take much for her to not be able to lift it.
And I will definitely just kneel down, grab the rock, and gingerly pick it up in a way that it scrapes or pushes against her foot as little as possible as I lift it.
Okay. As soon as you do, she pushes herself back so that her foot is no longer in the way. And you do see that the foot has a couple of cuts on it. It doesn't from first glance appear broken or anything, but it does have cuts and it has stopped bleeding.
I put the rock down and I turn to the girl and I say, Layla, can you do me a favor and sit here? And I unfold my blanket again and put it down and pat on it and say, if you could sit here and keep your leg out, I have some items in my backpack that will help to make sure that your cut is cleaned up and that we can make sure you're taken care of before you go home.
Okay. She she scooches her butt over until she's sitting on the blanket. And the whole time, once she sits down, the whole time she's just sitting there and she's playing with that rock. She's moving it around in her hands and she's looking at it and then looking at you and just trying to keep her mind occupied.
So I would like to reach into my pack. I have some items I brought from the tower. I'm hoping that I might have something I might be able to use as like a bandage and maybe some plants or materials I can use to make a makeshift salve.
Okay.
And that would just be to cover the wound, dress it, and I would finish it off with a wonderful casting of Cure Wounds, keeping my mask on the whole time, just to make sure that we use a little bit of magic to take care of those injuries.
All right.
So I have my herbalism kit, and I don't know what you'd like me to do as far as actual like treatment.
So you actually want to make the salve, right?
Yes.
Okay. So did you say you have stuff in your kit that's already prepared, or would you have to create your ingredients before going forward with making the salve?
Probably have to make it.
Okay. Go ahead and do your check for your herbalism kit to make sure that you can actually grind out everything and prepare the ingredients first. And I'll just have you do a straight wisdom check for that. Okay. So you want to create the ingredients and then make the salve and treat the girl, correct?
Yes.
Okay. So why don't we start by using your herbalism kit? So make a straight wisdom check for me and we'll make sure that you can actually grind out what you have and prep the ingredients and then we'll worry about the rest.
Okay. I'll go ahead and make a check with the herbalism kit. 13.
Okay. Well, the good news is you are able to get the ingredients, right? You've done this enough that you know which herbs to grab and how much they need to be ground up and how which ones need to be kept separated and which ones can be mixed in. So you do fine with that. Go ahead and now make me a medicine check to actually mix up the salve.
18.
Perfect. Yes, you are able to make this salve to soothe her cuts. You are able to clean the wounds, no problem. They're not very big. You can apply the salve and bandage her up and um, As you're poking around, you don't feel like there's any bones broken. It looks like her foot might have just gotten caught. She seems to be okay.
And then to finish it off, I give a quick wink at her and I say, and now for one last trick. And I cast Cure Wounds and make sure that there's all the scrapes and cuts just kind of close up, and that should do it. I look at Layla and I say, now keep the dressing on for a little while, just to make sure that everything is fine and that it doesn't get infected. But it looks like you're in tip-top shape. Very brave.
She has a big smile on her face. Thank you, 8.
Layla, how
You're very
far
nice.
how far is it from home for you, Layla?
She stops smiling at that, and then suddenly there's a bright flash of light. So much so that it's actually quite blinding to you. And as the light fades, you see standing before you what appears to be a human adult. They're adorned in flowing robes of gold, blue, green, and beige. Their brown hair flowing past their shoulders and dotted with clumps of moss and flowers. And their skin is almost grayish brown, kind of like the lake bed.
Oh,
Make a perception check for me.
15. I just kind of look up and say, that's different.
With that perception check, you notice that their eyes, if you didn't know any better, you would think that you were looking at the sky inside their head. They're the same pale blue, there are wispy clouds floating by. The face is both masculine and feminine. It's hard to discern which, as the changes are almost constant. And they're melding so perfectly, it's hard to discern what gender this person could possibly be. Not that it matters, but when you're trying to study people, 8, I'm sure that you want to know everything about them.
Is it
uh,
is that you, Layla?
they smile. And when they speak, their voice is almost sing-songy. And it reflects both deep baritone and melodic soprano. And they say, 8, fair traveler. You've wandered into what was once one of my most elegant temples. Forgive me of my deception. The last people that came here were treasure hunters, and they destroyed this temple. So I had to know your intentions before I could reveal myself to you. People call me Lore. And 8, I want you to make a history check for me. You remember that Lore is actually the deity of nature. Many people in the books that you've read revere this particular deity when they're growing crops or when they're looking for water. Anything that could be a blessing for rain or sun, this is the deity that they would pray to.
Oh, do I know of any uh, traditions or salutes or um, t- types of uh, methods of prayer or things that people would normally do with regards to this deity?
Um, Many of the books that you've read talked more about the mythology of the gods and goddesses, not Lore was has always been considered a deity of just being. People might offer a word of thanks for rain. They might, um, when they go hunting, leave a bit of the kill for lore, and then taking usually something that would actually be useful to creatures in the area, like a piece of meat, things like that. So it's more of
An idea
things to
rather
be,
than an organized
yeah, things
worship.
to be done in the moment, like thank you for the rain, thank you for the sun to dry the flooding. Nothing standard like, oh, you have to kneel in this fashion, or you have to put your hand in this form of gesture. So
The first thing I do is um, I reach into my bag and pull out the sack with the fulara in it, and I pull it out and hold it, and I say, "I took these flowers. I'm sorry."
Lore smile gets bigger, and they laugh and they say, "Eight, you're allowed to cultivate what you will use. I've been watching you. I watched you as you observed the Veridim swimming in the lake. I watched you as you picked the Fulara and observed the bees and the butterflies. I know you didn't take those flowers in malicious intent. You can keep those."
Whew. Sigh a quick sigh of relief. You
Now,
you've been
uh,
watching me?
I have. I watch all who come within the vicinity of my temple. You're an interesting character, Eight. You're not like anyone that I've seen wandering the road these few centuries.
um, I get a
Where do you,
little sad at that statement, and my eyes dim a touch. And looking at Lore, I say, "I'm the first of my kind that you've seen in centuries."
well, I would actually say that you're the first of your kind I've seen. Um, I have guarded these islands since time began, and I think you're the first one I've seen. Yes, yes, that sounds about right.
Tell me, what what was this temple for?
I was once the most revered deity of nature, at least on these islands. My siblings monitor the mainland. So perhaps they would know more of your kind, if that is what you seek. But for my part, when people first inhabited these islands, I did not welcome them, and I admit I was a little harsh. But eventually they learned to respect nature and the balance, and they eventually built temples. And I blessed them with healthy crops, fruitful wildlife, and crops. And they grew wealthy, so much as happy families and successful farms are considered wealth. And then the wars came. And when the wars reached the island, it brought with them looters, treasure hunters. They destroyed everything that you see here centuries ago. And since then, I've guarded this spot. But you, why are you out wandering? What are you doing on these islands?
Well, to be quite honest, I'm heading to the Giant's Fist, that I might leave the islands.
Where do you intend to go? I assume you are headed to the mainland, but do you have a specific spot in mind?
Not particularly. I must say, it's been quite the fruitful day and a half since I've left home. I really just want to fill my reach into the bag, pull out the journal. I want to fill my journal with experiences and notes and pictures and just see what the world has to offer.
Laura smiles again. Well, you already seem to have a respect for nature and for life in general. So if you promise to maintain that, and with that, Laura reaches out their hand and they very gently place their palm on your forehead. And when they remove their hand, they say, I'm going to give you this blessing of protection, and it will stay with you as long as you maintain your respect for nature and the balance of life. Once you lose that, the blessing will go away. I may not have much reach on the mainland, but I can at least give you that. A small bit of my protection. And if you ever run into my siblings, they'll be as helpful to you as I have been.
Looking up to my forehead, and then back to Lore, I ask, what does the blessing do? Can I ask?
You will realize it when the time comes. And at this, the smile becomes slightly mischievous, and their eyes become slightly stormy, and you'll notice that the sky above you, the clouds are starting to darken. And then just as soon as it has appeared, the sky clears, and Laura's eyes return to that pale blue.
How will I know if I lose the blessing, though, if I don't know what it does?
Oh, 8. You're very smart. You will know that you have lost the blessing because what warmth you feel in here. And with that, Lore taps at your chest plate towards where your heart would be. What warmth you have in here will go cold, and you will not have the sympathy or the empathy or the respect or love that you currently have for life. You will know. You
I,
mortals ask too many questions sometimes.
far be it from me to question a god. Thank you for all that you do, and I hope that I get to experience more of your bounty as I continue my travel.
Well, farewell then, 8. May we meet again someday.
I hope so.
After you say that, Lore slowly fades away, so that at first they become very transparent, and then they just start to disappear altogether until there is nothing before you.
Hmm. I wonder what was stolen from here. It's very sad. If I may poke around a little bit more just to see what else might be etched into the walls, and after that probably head back to the road.
You look through the rest of the ruins and you don't notice anything else etched into the walls. You don't see much. One of the rooms does have a stone altar, or what potentially should have been an altar. Certainly is a large decorative block of stone with the same symbol on the top of it, but any other furniture or trappings would have rotted and disintegrated long ago. When you return to the road, it leads you away from the ruins and into the forest again. Same as yesterday, the thick woodland prevents you from seeing much beyond the road as you meander through it. And by mid afternoon, the woods begin to clear, and it isn't long before it opens up into a vast grassland. And up ahead, you see airships hovering.
Oh.
The road eventually takes you to the Giant's Fist, a city, a bustling city. There are no gates that block off this civilization. There are no guards stationed. As you walk closer, you see large stone buildings and the people bustling about their daily lives or carrying baskets filled with goods, or they're milling in and out of shops that are along the main road. This dirt road that you've been following turns into a cobblestone street where people are riding horses and sitting in carriages. As you walk down the street, a group of laughing children run by you and head down the street before disappearing from view. Many of the people that you see around you are dressed very differently from the villagers at Caravana. Instead of the drab browns of farmers, you see finely cut wool and linen, varying from bright hues to soft pastels. Much of the clothing, to you, doesn't seem to suit a purpose, but rather appears to be for show, kind of like the many birds and animals that you've read about in your books. There are women wearing large hats adorned with feathers or brightly colored ribbons.
Ooh.
Men are decked out in fine jewelry or are suited with shining pieces of armor and weaponry.
Mm.
Very few of them give you a second glance as you walk by. As you walk down the main street, you see that the road starts to branch off into smaller streets, and down these streets you see signs affixed to buildings indicating things such as a florist and a baker, places to eat, places to stay for the night. You do see an almoner and an apothecary. You see the butcher and other vendors of various trades. Is there anything in particular you'd like to do?
Well, point of order, as I walk down the street, I'll be sure to stop and introduce myself to everyone along the road.
Like,
I'm
you
8.
literally, you're going to stop and say that to everybody.
Well, as I pass people, maybe
Okay.
do a
So not
friendly wave.
everybody, just the closest people.
I suppose. If they look at me, I'll do that to them.
Some of them smile and keep walking. Others raise an eyebrow and look at you like, oh, well, that was different.
The reason I'm here was to get passage to the mainland, and my friends in Caravana were sure to give me enough money that I might be able to buy a ticket.
Mhm.
So I suppose the first thing I would like to do is procure a ticket for the next flight, and the second thing I might like to do is pick up some of my cooking and medicinal stocks, make sure that those are set for a long trip. And the third thing I might like to do is get myself some fancy duds. Bright colors, pastels, sign me up.
Okay. As you follow the main road, you do start to see signs on wooden posts. So these signs are wood themselves, but they've been painted to indicate an airship and arrows that point down one street and then the next. So you're able to easily navigate your way to the airport. And when you arrive, this airport is not surrounded by tall buildings. So the road will go and then suddenly the buildings will stop. And you follow the road and this large, almost cobblestone park. So there are some stone benches and things randomly set up so that people can look over the edge because this airport is actually at the edge of the island. And you know that the islands themselves actually float. So thousands of feet below is the ocean. People enjoy sitting out here just to look at the ocean in this unique perspective rather than, get up on the airship and actually go anywhere. So you're able to follow the road through this stone park. And at the very edge, the stonework actually extends beyond the edge of the island and fans out into 3 distinct docks. And each dock houses a large airship, and each airship is made up of a bulbous oblong shape, white canvas, and what looks to be either brass or copper, some sort of brownish metal makes up the casework and the bases and the propellers. And right now, everything is tethered to those ports. So the ships themselves are actually floating out beyond the landing area. At the very edge, of those ports, so right before you would actually walk out onto the ports themselves, is a small hut with a sign that says tickets.
Ooh, tickets. That must be where I'd like to go. And I'll continue towards the little hut, greeting everyone as I pass through the stone plaza.
So when you reach the hut, it's actually quite small. Um, the door and the roof, well, the roof itself really only reaches up to your waist. And the door is actually even smaller than that.
Is the window open?
No. But
I,
it's one of those doors where the top can open and the
okay.
bottom can stay latched.
I lean down, like bend over slightly sideways to make like an L shape with my body, and I knock with my big meaty hand on the upper part of the door.
Okay.
By the way, I have 3 fingers and a thumb.
Yep. All right. So you knock and there's no response. Do you knock again?
Wait a little bit to be polite, and
That's very thoughtful of you, 8.
when no one answers after some time, I knock again. Not really, not really any more urgently, but just a little harder.
Okay.
Couple it
After
with a hello.
after your second knock at your hello, you hear scuffling on the inside. And the top part of the door opens and you see a very short man with elongated ears. Um, you know this person to be a gnome, of which subsect you are not sure, but you know them to be a gnome. His gray hair coming like wire as tufts out from his ears and from behind his head and around his very shiny bald spot. And he's got big thick glasses and he's got his fists on his hip. He's looking up and down. What do you want?
Oh, hello. My name is 8. I am looking for a ticket that I may fly down to the mainland.
Well, do you know how to read?
Yes, the sign said tickets.
What else does the sign say? You see in very small print underneath tickets, hours of operation, 1 p.m. to 8 p.m.
What time is it now?
He lifts up his wrist and you see that he's got some sort of contraption on his wrist, a leather strap, and then a big round thing. And he stares at that for a little while. And he looks at you and he says, "It's 12:30. You've got 30 minutes before you can knock on this door."
Am I familiar with measurement of time?
You know how to read the sun for telling time. You've
Is it?
seen large grandfather type clocks, but you've never seen something to be carried on a wrist.
I understand the concept of.
Of a clock, yes.
Okay, I didn't know how rare that may or may not be. Okay,
On the islands, it's not that rare. This would be your first time seeing something like this, but most people, from your understanding, have clocks in their home.
okay. Fascinating. Is is that a clock on your wrist?
He looks down at his wrist and then looks at you and raises a single eyebrow. You never seen a watch?
Well, I have now. If that's what that is.
He kind of compresses his mouth a little bit, um, almost as if you see somebody who's trying not to laugh, somebody who's angry at you, but is now finding you very funny and trying not to laugh. That's the look that this person is giving you right now, and he sighs. 8. Come back in 30 minutes. And he closes the top half of the door, and you hear some more shuffling
As
inside before it goes silent.
as he's closing it, I just go, "But wait, I don't know what your name is. I'll just come back in 30 minutes." Is there anyone standing nearby?
No,
Hmm.
there's some people you can see back towards the main street where some of the benches were, but nobody near you.
Okay. I turn and head towards. I follow the signs to try and find the apothecary shop.
Okay. The apothecary, it takes you a little while to meander your way back through the streets because you had seen the sign for the apothecary almost when you entered the city. So when you get there, you see that it's actually on one of the side streets, and the door is one of 3 that are built into the side of this building that you see.
I check the sign. Does it say apothecary?
It does.
Does it have hours of operation?
It does not.
Excellent. I approach the door and knock.
You can come in. The door is open.
Fair enough. I push through.
As you open the door, you hear a little bell go ting a ling a ling ling. And inside, you see a woman. And she's standing behind a very large wooden counter, and she's mixing something with a mortar and pestle. And she looks up and she says this, Ah, figured out how the door works, did you?
The
She's got a
last
smile on her face when she says this.
the last door I tried was locked, and the person on the other side was not very friendly.
Hmm. Did you go to the airport and talk to Marshall?
I did go to the ticket booth near the airport.
So
There
you
was a
talked to Marshall.
there was a short man with a watch.
Yes, that would be Marshall.
I am 8. I would like to purchase select items for a long and unplanned trip.
All right. Well, welcome to my shop, 8. My name is Celeste. What items are you looking to buy? And with that, she sets the mortar and pestle aside and she stands up, and you can see that she's wearing some of the nicely cut um, woolen dress suits that a lot of the women were wearing. So close crop to the wrist, high up on the neck, very tight lines, very modest looking. It's a dark navy, and she has a very simple um, brooch on the left side of her chest. The brooch looks almost to be a like a hummingbird. She moves further down the counter, and you can see that she's starting to unlock something out of sight.
Well, you see, I just left home the other day, and I don't know where I'm going other than down to the mainland, and I don't have a lot of things with me, but I would like to make sure that I have enough herbs and uh, medicinal cure-all and salves on hand that if I come across someone who is in need of medical treatment, I might be able to better assist them.
She looks you up and down. All right.
And maybe a few items that might help with indigestion, allergic reactions, something to help someone sleep, perhaps a cure-all for uh, someone who's come down with hay fever. Ooh, and maybe something to help if someone moves through poison ivy or poison sumac. Ooh, I need many things.
I can see that. All right. Well, let's start out a little small. So let's backtrack. You are going to the mainland, but you don't know where you're going.
That is correct.
So therefore, you don't know what you're going to be dealing with.
Also correct.
All right. Now, do you know which portion of the mainland you'd like to go? Because there are 3 ships, and Marshall's going to want to know which ship you want to buy for.
That I do not know.
Mm. Well, let's see. It's going to take about a month for you to get from here to there.
Travel.
It is. Thankfully, the ships are usually well stocked, so anything you should be buying from me, you probably won't need on the trip. Ooh, do you like festivals?
I do not know. What are they?
Oh, you've never been to a festival before?
I have not.
Well, a festival is a big party where people eat and they drink and they laugh, and there's music and dancing and games. Depending on what the festival is, there may be ceremonies to attend. Is
Sounds
that
like
something you might enjoy?
sounds like an experience. To attend one.
If you don't have a a specific place in mind in the mainland that you'd like to go, by the time you arrive, you should be able to attend the Festival of Aram. It's supposedly one of the biggest festivals you can attend. Um, the city of Celine holds it every year. It's some sort of celebration of, celebration for shepherds or something. I don't know. It's supposed to be the most well attended festival and the most exciting one that you can attend. So if you're going to attend a festival, I would recommend that one,
Have you
which
been?
means, oh, no, I've just dreamed about it, heard about it from people that have come up here from the mainland and talked about it. And one day I'll go. But
Well, I would be happy to attend on your behalf.
well, thank you, Abe. That's very thoughtful of you. Um, if you're going to go, you're going to want to take the northeastern ship, which I believe usually is the, as you look at the three ships on the airport, I believe that it would be the ship to the left. Um, but you can verify that with Marshall. He runs everything there. Just tell him you want to be able to get to Saline in time for the festival. He'll give you tickets for the right ship.
That
Um,
seems simple enough.
Now, that area of the mainland generally tends to be much more grassland and open space, and a lot of the civilizations are along the shoreline, so the sea. So you probably won't need too much as far as poisonous plants, but I'll give you something that's a general um, antihistamine and anti-itch. How is that? Would that work for you?
That sounds fine.
All right. So as she starts talking to herself and starts wandering around the shop, she starts pulling bottles off the shelf and she starts grabbing little wooden boxes and opening them and smelling and saying, no, no, not that. And she's going around gathering things and putting them on the countertop in front of you. And it doesn't take long until you've got a few jars and boxes in front of you, a couple of bags. And she looks and she says, so what you have here, you have general antihistamines and anti-itch. You have anti-inflammatory. You have cures for rheumatism and arthritis and the flu and fever. And you have pretty much everything that you've asked for. Now, are you taking all of this with you, or would you like a sample of everything?
I'll be taking it all with me.
Okay. She reaches underneath the counter and opens up. You hear something, a door of some sort, kind of like a sliding cupboard door opening up. And she pulls out an abacus and then parchment, quill, and ink. And she starts moving each of the pieces of bag and box and bottle. And you see her stop every once in a while and say, oh, well, that shouldn't have been there. And she puts the bottle on the countertop that's behind her and out of reach. And with each one, she's moving the beads on the abacus and she's writing down names and numbers. And she looks up at you and says, that will be 100 gold.
Oh. Mm. Uh, mm, w- I don't have that much.
Oh, all right. Well, maybe let's do this. And she starts shuffling some things into piles. Then she looks at you and she says, how much are you willing to spend here today?
How much is a plane ticket?
A plane ticket will be 2 gold if you're going to Saline.
I suppose I could part with 12 gold? I don't have much.
12 gold. All right.
Oh,
Then I
wait a minute.
suppose.
Reaching around in my bag. Or in my, yeah, reaching around in my gear and such, I find a little pouch with some gold that had been given to me on the trip before I left the city, or before I left the village of Caravana, and I put that down. I have this too, and it's 30. So,
Okay.
oh, I suppose I could go up to 40.
She looks at you and says, "Do you really want to spend everything you have before you even reach the mainland?"
Was not, Celeste.
How
Best to
about this?
stay on a modest budget.
How about this? She starts moving things again into separate piles, and she pushes one of the piles closest to you. This here has a sample of almost everything that you've asked for. You've got your anti-itch, you've got um, a cold remedy, you've got something for the stomach, and you have a couple of other things like pain relievers and such. So it's not as detailed as your original list would have been, but it covers many of the basics. I can sell this to you for 12 gold, and I will give you this. And she reaches over and pulls out a little wooden box, very ornately decorated, and she sets it in front of you. And when she opens it up, you see that there's a mix of dried herbs.
Ooh.
She goes, "This is my own special blend. I use this for most anything from flu to headaches. It is most useful in a tea."
Oh,
If you have anyone with any sort of intestinal distress, it'll work wonders.
that's wonderful. That that's perfect. Of course.
I will give you this box, no charge, if you promise to go dancing at least once while you are at the festival.
Uh, I can certainly try. I've never danced before.
All right? Oh, and when you eventually come back, you'll have to tell me all about it. Those are my caveats for you taking this free of charge. And she pushes the box towards you.
Count out the money and put the 12 gold on the counter. Of course. I'd be happy to come back. Someday.
Then I look forward to it. She starts taking the bottles and the bags and the boxes that you did not buy and starts putting them back on the shelf.
I'm sorry for making you take things down to have to put them back.
Oh, no, 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 please. I do this all day long. You'd be surprised how many people come in here saying that they've got a headache. I try to recommend a remedy, and then they tell me that they've tried it before and it didn't work. So I do this every day. Now, is there anything else you'll be needing? Anywhere else you need to go before you go buy your ticket?
You wouldn't
I
happen
mean,
to also sell tea, would you?
I do. She goes first, she puts the abacus and the parchment and quill away, and she closes the cupboard, and you hear keys turning a lock. She goes back down to the other end of the counter, and she unlocks another cupboard door, and she starts to pull out a very large box, also ornately decorated. And she waves you down to that end of the counter. She opens up the box, and inside you see little cloth satchels. And she says, "This is all the tea that I sell. I have here on the left the more citrusy, versions. I have in the center here the more floral for soothing, and I do have a couple peppermint stashed in here somewhere. Is there something in particular you're looking for?
We'll take whatever you would recommend. I would just like to be able to offer hospitality to others I meet on the road.
All right, then she takes out two little satchels with a green ribbon, sets them on the counter. Um, four with a pale purple ribbon, two with an orange ribbon, and one with a black ribbon. And she points to the green ribbon. She says, "These are the peppermint." She points to the orange and she says, "These are the citrus." The pale purple are the floral, so chamomile and lavender and so forth. And this black one, she plays with the ribbon a little bit. And she looks at you and she says, "The black one. Um, I generally drink for breakfast. It is well, we call it black tea. Um, I would save that for a special occasion when you want to celebrate something."
I'll take them all.
All right, that will be 5 gold.
Gladly. And put that money down too. So you said it's 4 green, 2 orange, 2 purple, and 2 black?
4 purple,
4
2 green,
purple.
2 orange, 1 black.
Thank you.
Mhm.
You've been
She
most helpful today, Celeste.
Well, it was a pleasure helping you, 8. I wish you luck on your travels.
I wish
And
you
she
luck in
closes the
your...
box.
I look around. Wish you luck in your shop? And I'll turn around after gathering up the items and wave as I head out the door.
She waves to you and goes back to cleaning things up.
Everyone's so helpful. Well, most everyone is helpful. I don't know if it's been 30 minutes yet, but I suppose it wouldn't hurt to go get my ticket now. And I'll go return to the ticket booth to Marshall.
By the time you meander your way back to the airport and get up to the ticket booth, you do see, just as you reach the door, the top half opening. And you see Marshall brace his hands against the edge of the door and he goes to lean forward to call out. And he looks up and he sees you and says, "But you didn't waste any time, did you?"
Has it been 30 minutes?
"Yes. Now, do you want a one wayer or a round trip?" And he turns and reaches back behind him and comes out and he's got a wooden box in front of him. He's kind of just tapping the top of the box, waiting for your answer.
How how long does the two-way trip last? Do I have to come back immediately, or how does it work?
Round trip ticket depends. If you want to go for 2 days, it's going to be 5 gold. If you want to go for a week, it'll be 10 gold. If you want to have a open-ended ticket, that'll be 100.
One way, please.
Right? Now, where do you want to go?
I was told to take the airship that will get me to Salim.
Salim? Do you mean saline?
What? Yes, I'm sorry.
No, it's. He sighs. It's fine. It's fine. It's.
This with the festival.
Yes, saline. I have to be clear because Salim is on the Western continent. And if you're not willing to pay 100 gold for an open ended ticket, you certainly can't afford to go there.
I see. Yes, saline.
All right. He opens up the box. That'll be 2 gold for a one way ticket to Saline and the northeastern region of the mainland.
Buy a ticket back here from where I land?
Yes, anywhere that there's an airport, you can buy a ticket back here. Just keep in mind that the farther away you go, it's going to be more expensive.
That makes sense. I will take that ticket, please. And I plop the gold in the box.
He picks up one of the gold pieces and he nibbles on it a little bit. And then he pops it into his box, hands you a paper slip. And the slip itself is actually just a piece of parchment that has some writing on it that says, allow the bearer of this ticket to board ship number 152 on route to the northeastern district.
When does the ship leave?
That ship, that'll be leaving tomorrow morning, 6 o'clock on the dot.
Is that 6 in the morning?
He raises an eyebrow. Yes.
Follow-up question. Where might I get a watch?
Well, I had this imported from my cousin, who lives on the mainland. I guess you could check there. They're not cheap.
Well, it seems so handy to have. I will. I would very much like to find one in my travels.
Well, I wish you the best of luck. Near as I can tell, they only make them on the western continent.
Oh. Okay, well, I'm sure I will get there eventually.
Is there anything else I can do for you? And he
No,
points behind you. You're starting to make a line.
I look behind me. How many people are there?
There's like 10 people waiting.
I turn to the person behind me and I say, I'm sorry for making you wait. Hi, I am 8.
It's a young woman and she smiles, but it's very awkward looking. Like, hello, 8.
Excuse me. I turn and look back at Marshall and just say, no, Marshall, I believe I am all set today. Thank you so much for your time. And I apologize for coming early. And with that, I take the ticket and I grip it in between both of my hands and walk away.
Okay.
I have a whole day and a half before the airship will leave.
Mm-hmm.
I did not really plan on doing much else. I I suppose I could just sit and wait in the park.
I mean, you could. There are benches. If you really wanted to sit there all day and night, you could watch people.
I suppose that would be fine. I mean, I'll turn to the nearest person and wave at them.
Okay. person would be seated on a bench on the so if you're looking back from Marshall's ticket booth to the city, they're sitting on a bench on your right-hand side.
I kind of approach them and, still holding the ticket between both hands, I look at them and I say, uh, excuse me, I I hate to bother you, but I'm new to the city and I need something to do for a day and a half and a, and a place to stay overnight. Do do you have any suggestions for what I might do and where I might go?
The person you are speaking to is a man, and he's wearing a very, um, nice set of, um, leather clothing, and he's got a few pieces of armor, so he's got some spalders and some greaves. He's got what you can tell to be only 2 weapons attached, and sitting next to him is a little boy decked out in very similar attire. They're each eating a piece of fruit, and when you come up and start saying these things to him, the man stops eating and listens and then says to you, "Oh, well, um, I suppose if you need a place to stay," um, and he points down the main street. There are a few inns and of the like down the main street there. I wouldn't stay anywhere that's not on the main street there. Anything off the main road will be less savory. Uh, if you need something to do, many of them have music and drinking. Uh, there are, I suppose, some places for if you would like to play cards, or I guess it depends on what you like to do.
I have never really stopped to consider what I like to do. I suppose I can think on that when I get to an inn. Thank you, sir.
You're welcome.
And I turn on my heels, holding the ticket still between both of my hands, and start walking through the plaza towards the main road, looking for the inn. Looking for an inn. Hmm. 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 Ooh, look at these buildings.
You do find one not too far um, down the road from the airport. Give me 1 second. I'm pulling up the document. One moment here. All right. So you do see a tavern, and you can tell it's a tavern because it actually says tavern, but the name is actually called the Dancing Dwarf. What? Don't laugh.
This looks like a tavern. The sign says so. I suppose I should go in.
Okay, so you go in, you hear another one of those tingly bells that you heard at the apothecary. And inside, it is a sizable crowd. And I mean, it is still lunchtime. And you can see that people are drinking, they're eating bowls of some sort of soup. You see a woman, very tall woman, standing behind the counter cleaning glasses. And she waves at you as you come into the through the door. She's not dressed as finely as a lot of the people you've been seeing. She's got a very simple woolen dress with the sleeves rolled up past her elbows, and her thick, curly blonde hair is tied back into a braid.
still clutching the ticket in front of me between both my hands, and I kind of shuffle forward with both of my arms kind of held close to my chest with the ticket, and I see the woman, and I approach her. Hello.
Hello. How can I help you?
I am 8, and I am looking for a place to stay overnight.
All right, so you need a place to stay for the night. Do you just need a single bed? Do you need food?
I do not need food, and a bed if you have one, though I really just need a place to stand.
She looks at you and says, she looks down around the counter to see if anybody else is looking at you. Do you not sleep?
I also look back and forth, kind of mimicking what she did. I rest, but no, I do not sleep.
All right. Um, well,
Can you
if you don't,
accommodate me?
um, I mean, I can. I'm trying to think of what would be appropriate. I mean, if you don't need to sleep, I could throw you in the broom closet, and she looks you up and down. I don't feel like that would be very nice. Um, I'm sorry. I've seen your kind before, but I've never had one ask for a room. So, you know what? Let me give you a room for the night. You can choose whether you want to sit on the bed or not. Um,
Thank
if
you.
you're just staying for the evening, that'll be 10 silver.
I
Since you don't need food, I'm giving you a discount.
I slide the money to her. 8 looks at the woman, and you said you've seen my kind before?
Well, yes. I mean, I've seen many travelers.
What what were they like? Can I ask? Ooh, can I sit and talk with you about it? Do you have
Um,
time? Do you get off work? When do you get off work? We could talk about it.
she starts to look a little concerned and she says, if you would like to discuss it, pull up a seat and we can chat a little bit in between my other patrons, if you don't mind.
Okay, I can do that. And I pull up the seat and sit down. Are there other people seated at the table?
Not close. There are a few people on one end of the bar and then some on the other end, but nobody seems to be sitting right in the middle, which is where you are.
Are they like drinking or eating, or what are they doing at the table?
Both. Some have bowls of stew in front of them, some have beer, others are just sitting and talking.
When she comes back, I look at her and I say, "Could could I get a glass of whatever he's drinking?"
She looks down the bar. You'd like some ale?
Sure. Yes.
Right? That'll be 5 silver. And she turns and gets a pint glass and she fills it from something underneath the counter and she sets it on the countertop in front of you.
Thank you. And I do a quick sip on it and kind of taste it. Well, put it in my mouth. This is a mild toxin. Why do people drink this? Hmm. If it's what the people enjoy. And I take a swig.
Oh boy. And she does say that in game. And she leans on the bar a little bit and puts her hand in, or rather her chin in her right hand and says to you, "Satisfied with the drink? Is it to your liking?"
I will be able to consume this. Yes, thank you. And I put my other hand down on the counter with ticket under it, and I stare right into her face and say, "So, what can you tell me about others of my kind that you've seen?"
Well, usually I see them traveling with people who look like they've got quite a bit of money to throw around. Silks and expensive jewelry and the like. Um, Many of your kind do not wear, she looks you up and down again, clothing, and they often tend to be much bigger than you, very fierce looking.
So they're naked.
Yes, yes, they are naked.
Are they embarrassed by it?
I don't believe so.
I never really think much about being naked, but it is customary to wear clothing, is it not?
Generally, yes.
You say they travel with rich people?
Yes.
Are they others that look like me, or are
I've
they...
never seen one of your stature, no.
Do, do my people say anything?
Not to me.
But they do say things.
I would imagine at some point. Usually, when they come in here, they don't stay long. Many of the people that they are with don't want to stay in my establishment for some reason. A little hoity-toity, if you think about it. But
What does this mean, hoity-toity?
um, she reddens a little bit. I, I've always been told it means that um, they're so wealthy they think nothing's good enough for them. I'm hoping I'm using that right. Am I?
Are you implying they think that your establishment is poor?
Yes.
Oh. I look around a little bit. This is a modest establishment, but I like it.
She kind of does a half smile. Well, thank you. I appreciate that. I work very hard to keep it clean and organized.
Is So you've seen people like me, but they are very different than I am. Am I understanding correctly?
Yes. I haven't had much interaction with them. I've only seen them from a distance. So, unfortunately, I can't tell you much more than that, but they do appear much different than you.
Well, I appreciate you sharing what you know, Miss
My name is Kira.
Kira. Thank you, Kira.
You're welcome.
Might I just sit here for a while?
Of course, sit as long as you like. Just know that the bar closes at midnight, and after that, you must go up to your room or exit the establishment. And considering you've paid the money for the room, I would suggest you go to the room.
That's fair. Do do you play cards, Kira?
On occasion.
Do you enjoy it?
Can be a nice way to relax, depending on who you play with. Why do you ask?
Would would you teach me to play cards? I was
She
told that some people enjoy playing, and I have never played, so I do not know if I enjoy it or not.
she looks around the bar and she looks at you and says, "All right. How about this? When I close things down, I will teach you how to play cards when the bar is empty. Is that fair?
You are busy, yes. I appreciate that. I'm sorry to impose.
No, you're fine. Just a word to the wise. Anytime you go into a busy establishment, I would try your best not to distract the proprietor, unless it is to ask for food or drink.
I see. Then starting now, I will stop bothering you. Thank you.
Well, bother me if you want another one of those or something to eat. Otherwise, I'll see you at midnight. And she goes down the counter to attend to some patrons who have been waiting. And that is where we are going to end our session.
Hooray!
So I want everyone to stay tuned. There will be another little mini session about Eight's adventures before Roads Uncharted starts. So please stay tuned. And we hope you've enjoyed this little adventure of Eight.
Thank you, Vanamiri.
You're welcome.
And thank you for listening. That's right.
Yes,
We're talking to you, the listener. Thank you.
yes, thank you for listening, and we'll see you next time.